Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of my YouTube channel. This week I wanted to talk a little bit about earnest money and kind of explain what that is in a real estate transaction. So let's say that you're a buyer, you find a house that you like, you have your realtor write up an offer, your offer gets accepted, you go under contract at that point. One of the first things that you do upon going under contract is you make an earnest money deposit with your buying agent. Earnest money is essentially kind of like an early down payment on the house. It's you showing the sellers and the selling agent that you're serious about buying that house, that you really want it, and that you're putting a little bit of money on the table ahead of time to show your seriousness and show your commitment to buying that house. That you're not just kicking the tires like you go to Walmart, buy a toaster, return it after a week. It's one of those situations. You're committed and serious about buying this house. So the way that works is, in some markets, it can be a substantial amount of money that you put down on the house, like 1% to 3%, something like that. Here in the Dayton market in the Ohio area, it's a lot less. Usually it's anywhere from $500 to $1,000. And the way that works is you can write a personal check, or you can get a cashier's check or a money order from your bank to have that money drawn out of your account. And then you essentially just put an early payment down on the house that gets taken out of closing costs at the end for you. That money is deposited with your buying agent's brokerage, and then that is factored into the final sales price. And it's just kind of an early commitment showing them that you're serious, and then your realtor will show proof of that deposit to the sellers. And if something goes wrong with the transaction, in some cases you might be able to get that earnest money back. In other cases, you might not be able to. If you pull out of the deal because you find an issue with the inspection, or there's an issue with appraisal or your loan processing, again, this is not guaranteed. But in most cases, you would be able to get that earnest money back, or you'll be able to keep that earnest money since it was part of the contract, not being obliged. Now, let's say you're halfway through the contract and you find another house that you like instead, so you pull out of this deal, go with that house instead, or you just get cold feet and decide to cancel the contract. What is supposed to happen is you do not get that earnest money back. Then that goes to the sellers kind of as a little reimbursement for their time, for lack of a better word, being wasted on this deal that did not ultimately go through. It's kind of a little insurance policy, I guess, for the sellers as well then, if something happens with the deal. Now, you're not always guaranteed to get the earnest money back if you're a buyer or a seller in either situation, depending on how things ended with the deal. In most cases, it ends up in small claims court to get that money back, and if the funds go unclaimed for 3 years, it sits in a fund with the state, which you can then collect at the end of those 3 years. The brokerage sends it up to the state if no one claims it. So consider that when you're buying a house, to make sure you have anywhere from $500 to $1,000 or some amount of money in that range set aside that you can put down early on the house to show your commitment to the sellers. The more you can put down, the better. It shows your seriousness and commitment to that house. And if you do that, then that'll really help you out with the transaction and getting to the finish line and getting your contract accepted. And be sure that you can deposit that within the time frame set by the contract. Usually that's 3 days after going under contract. You've got to produce that earnest money and have that deposited with your buyer's agent. So just be sure to keep that in mind. Think about that when you're getting ready to start looking for a house to buy, one of the early things you have on your checklist. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Take care.